Everyone, I hope you had a good weekend. I hope you stayed warm. In most regions in Canada, it was extremely cold this weekend. On Friday, we stopped at NDP 25 and we will resume there. Can you refresh my memory? Was NDP 25 presented? Yes? Okay, so we were at the debate stage of this amendment. Does anyone wish to speak on this amendment?
Mr. Chair, the government side will be opposing this motion, but we will be presenting a counter motion, an alternative that I think expresses the spirit that our NDP member was expressing in her motion.
Parfait. Alors,
Perfect. Are there any other people who would like to speak at this point? Ms. Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yeah, just to remind committee members, since it's been a little bit since we were talking about this amendment, it's really about establishing clearer timelines for finalizing substance assessments. And it's really, we know that there's been multi-year delays, and so this would prevent those kind of multi-year delays between proposed and final risk assessments.
est-ce que d'autres intervenants?
Does anyone else wish to speak? No? We'll move to a vote. Mr. Clerk? On amendment NDP 25.
Mr. Dogood. Mr. Longfield.
Opposed.
Ms. Taylor-Roy. Ms. Taylor-Roy.
You're on mute, I think.
Ms. Thompson.
Oppose.
Mr. Weiler.
Opposed.
Mr. Deltel.
Oppose.
Excusez, est-ce que vous pouvez répéter?
Excusez-moi, je m'oppose.
Mr. Kirk.
I'm opposed.
Mr. McLean.
Opposed.
Mr. Lake. Madame Posey.
En accord.
Ms. Collins.
In favor.
And Ms. Taylor-Roy.
You're on mute.
You're
OK. Alors, elle s'oppose.
She's opposed.
Alors, l'amendement est défait.
The amendment is defeated. This brings us to BQ7. Ms. Posey, you have the floor.
I believe I mentioned I would have a counter amendment to NDP 25.
OK, I was told it might come after BQ, after NDP.
Oh, is that right? 26. Okay, very good.
OK. Madame Posey.
Ms. Posey. BQ7 adds a one-year timeline from the publication, 1 year after the publication, because when we don't set a deadline, you know, when I have an action plan, I always have a work-back schedule. There are always dates that require action, and that's the idea behind this. Let's be clear. We don't want things, you know, I always come back to the fact that it took 20 years to re-examine this act, and now we have the opportunity to impose timelines so that we don't lose sight of things. That's what this amendment seeks to do. Point B here is to add that the ministers can prorogate. So we could always add a year if they still have data that needs to be collected. And 8.1 is if that happens, they can provide a notice of the extension and the reasons for it. So within a year, if things haven't been done, we can extend by another year, and we have to justify that request. I think this is very logical. Ms. Collins?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, my hand was just up from the previous
OK.
vote.
Est-ce que
Would anyone else like to speak to this? Nope. Let's move to a vote.
Mr. Duguid,
Opposed?
Mr. Longfield,
Opposed.
Ms. Taylor-Roy, opposed. Ms. Thompson,
Oppose.
Mr. Weiler,
Opposed.
Mr. Deltel,
Contre.
Mr. Kirk,
I'm opposed.
Mr. McLean,
Contre.
Mr. Lake,
Opposed.
Madame Posey,
Pour.
and Ms. Collins.
In favor.
Yeas pour 2-2, nays contre 9-9.
alors l'amendement est rejeté.
The amendment is defeated. We now move on to NDP 26. Mr. Duguid.
Appropriate time for the counter amendment? After. Sorry, I'm so anxious on a Monday morning, Mr. Chair. You know, I'm a keener, as you know.
No, I know. Ms. Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So NDP 26 is again about establishing clear timelines around substance assessments, and I think the block amendment in the middle had elements of both of these, but I think we could just go to the vote.
OK. So we'll vote.
Mr. Duguid,
Contre?
Mr. Longfield,
Opposed.
Ms. Taylor-Roy. I'm sorry, we still can't hear you.
Thumbs up or thumbs down?
Yes. Thumbs up. Thumbs down.
Thumbs down. Thank you.
Thumbs down, I think it was.
Ms. Thompson. Ms. Thompson?
Oppose.
Mr. Weiler.
Opposed.
Monsieur Deltel.
Opposed.
Vous avez dit pour?
Opposed.
Opposed. Sorry. Mr. Kirk.
I'm opposed.
Mr. McLean.
Opposed.
Mr. Lake.
Opposed.
Madame Posey.
Pour.
And Ms. Collins.
In favor.
Yeas pour 2-2, nays contre 9-9.
So the amendment is defeated, and I believe, Mr. Duguid, you have an amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and excuse my enthusiasm this morning. It must be the great lunch.
There's
that,
no need to
that I
apologize for
arranged
enthusiasm ever. So.
Mr. Chair, I believe the amendment has been circulated. I just want to check with the clerk. It has been circulated, and I believe everyone has it, so there'll be no need for me to read it. Just to say that it does reflect the spirit of some of the previous amendments in providing some definition around timelines. So, Mr. Chair, I would like to present this motion to create a new requirement to publish a statement indicating the reasons for the delay, to publish a statement under paragraph 6B and an estimated time frame within which the statement under that paragraph is to be published. Paragraph 77.6b refers to statements indicating the final decision on measures related to an assessment. This motion, if adopted and enacted, will improve transparency and ensure the government remains accountable. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Duguid. Any questions or comments? Any discussion on this? Ms. Collins, is your hand up?
Yeah, and I just wanted to thank Mr. Duguid for putting this forward. Although I do think that the previous three amendments, the two by the NDP and one by the bloc, are stronger in terms of ensuring that we'll have clear timelines and, really preventing those multi-year delays. I do think this is a step forward, and I'll be supporting it.
Thank you. So we'll go to a vote.
Mr. Duguid.
Support, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Longfield.
In favor.
Ms. Taylor-Roy. I'm sorry, we didn't hear you.
Can we pause 1 moment? We're trying to read. Which one is it that we're dealing with here, Mr. Duguid? Because the email I have has 3 different motions in it. So
Okay.
And I'm reading off the phone, so which one is it?
That's fine with us, Mr. Chair. And perhaps we could give some technical help to Ms. Taylor-Roy so she can participate. So let's recess for
Okay, let's
or
we'll
pause.
pause. Alors, nous étions
We were moving to a vote. Mr. Clerk, you may proceed.
Can I just provide a clarification to the committee? We're talking about amendment, and the clerks have asked me to do this so that we don't become confused. E 021-020-34A. Just to put that in the record, our clerks, or, yep.
Okay, good.
I don't know. What does that mean, clerks?
It's a credit card number, actually. It's a
reference number.
reference number. It's the reference.
We have 4 minutes.
Yeah. It's a reference number. I think it's probably, that's how it's named in your email that you got, the attachment, right? Is that correct? Okay. We'll go to the vote.
Mr. Duguid,
In favor.
Mr. Longfield,
In favor.
Ms. Taylor-Roy,
In favor.
Ms. Thompson,
In favor.
Mr. Weiler,
In favor.
Mr. Deltel,
En accord.
Mr. Couric,
I'm in support.
Mr. McLean,
Pour.
Mr. Lake, Madame Posey,
Pour.
Ms. Collins.
In favor.
Yeas pour 11, 11.
So it's pretty clear that it's adopted, which brings us to a Green Party amendment PV 17. Ms. May?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This amendment will not surprise anyone here. It's part of a series of amendments, all of my amendments so far. If anyone's keeping score, it's everybody else, whatever, Greens 0. So you can be quite certain that none of my amendments have carried, and this is consistent with those in order to ensure we do not split the list of toxic substances, thus imperiling the whole scheme of the Act. I give it to you for and urge you to surprise me. Thank you.
Comments, questions, debate? No? We'll go to the vote.
Mr. Chair?
Sorry, Ms. Collins, I'm sorry. The little hand, you only see about a third of the hand on the screen. That's why the problem with it.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just wanted to thank Ms. May for putting this forward. I do think, given that the other ones haven't passed, this doesn't totally make sense without the previous ones, but I will be supporting it because I support the spirit of this, and I supported the motions before. And I want to thank her for putting it forward.
Thank you. So we'll go to the vote. Mr. Clerk?
Mr. Duguid,
Contre.
Mr. Longfield,
Opposed.
Ms. Taylor-Roy,
Opposed.
Ms. Thompson,
Oppose.
Mr. Weiler,
Contre.
Gotcha.
Monsieur Deltel,
Contre.
Mr. Couric,
I'm opposed.
Mr. McLean,
Opposed.
Mr. Lake,
Opposed.
Madame Posey,
En faveur.
Ms. Collins.
In favor.
Yeas pour 2, 2, nays contre 9, 9.
Merci. Alors, l'amendement...
Thank you. So the amendment carries. And we are now on to CPC 5.
And it's a pleasure to move CPC 5. This amendment is meant to drive as much precision as possible to the route of exposure, the form, the use of any specific marker related to the list of toxic substances. This would ensure that the substance that is risk managed under the Act is limited to that which has an unacceptable risk of exposure. This precision is all the more important for Schedule 1, Part 1 substances, where the proposed risk management outcome is the prohibition of that substance. Mr. Chair, the intent behind this committee is to drive as much precision and to have as much clarity as possible in the regulations to ensure that when something is, especially when it's being banned or prohibited, that both industry and Canadians know exactly what that means, and that there is as much detail as is possible surrounding that. Thank you.
Any other comments? No? Go to a vote.
Mr. Duguid,
Opposed.
Mr. Longfield,
Opposed.
Ms. Taylor-Roy,
To support.
Opposed.
Ms. Thompson,
Opposed.
Mr. Weiler,
Opposed.
Monsieur Deltel,
Pour.
Mr. Couric,
Support.
Mr. McLean,
En accord.
Mr. Lake,
Yes.
Madame Posey,
Contre.
Ms. Collins.
Opposed.
Yeas pour 4-4, nays contre 7-7.
L'amendement est
The amendment is defeated. Now, the next question. Will we adopt Clause 21 as amended? Moving to a vote.
on division? Pardon?
On division, yes.
En division.
Sorry.
Avec dissidence, comme on dit. OK. Alors, c'est avec
So it's carried on division. Moving on to Clause 22. We have an amendment from the NDP. I must warn you, before asking Ms. Collins to present her amendment, I'd like to tell you that if this amendment is adopted, NDP 27, then BQ 8 cannot be proposed because there would be a line conflict. Yes, you're right, Mr. Chair, for point A, but for and the replacement, but we want to add a point B, which is after line 23. So we're no longer discussing the same lines. How is that dealt with?
Et à ce moment-là, vous
Then you will be able to present part B only.
avez... Ms.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yeah, this is yet another time where two of my amendments are split into two different parts. So you'll see that NDP 27 and NDP 28 are very similar to BQ 8. They have a similar spirit. And so this first half of the one is about requiring the minister to set out timelines for all measures identified in the risk management plan. And yeah, I hope that the committee will support.
Okay, so do we go to a vote? I don't see any hands or... Okay.
Mr. Duguid,
Opposed, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Longfield,
Opposed.
Ms. Taylor-Roy,
Opposed.
Ms. Thompson,
Opposed.
Mr. Weiler,
Opposed.
Monsieur Deltel,
Contre.
Mr. Kirk,
I'm opposed.
Mr. McLean,
Opposed.
Mr. Lake,
Opposed.
Madame Posey,
Pour.
Ms. Collins,
In favor.
yeas pour 2-2, nays contre 9-9.
Alors, l'amendement est...
So the amendment is defeated. This means, Ms. Posey, that you can present your amendment in full. Well, I'm certain it will be carried then. Okay, so rather than presenting it, I would like to ask a question of my colleagues, to ask them why they are so fearful of timelines. These timelines are reasonable. When we add after line 23 that the time frame specified would be 2 years, but it could be extended. So I'd like to have an answer. Why is it that every time we try and impose timelines, you vote against it? You presented your amendment at the debate stage. Members are free to answer your questions, but they don't have to. This isn't question period, and we don't have to answer. Mr. Chair? I would like to share a thought. Earlier in the amendment that was presented by the government, there was pressure on the research. We were requesting that research and analysis be done in 2 years. So the shared goal that I have and that I share with my bloc colleague is that there not be an obligation, but that there be pressure. So we have some margin. We set 2 years. If the target wasn't met within 2 years, they have to provide explanations. So there's pressure, not obligation. You'll understand that everyone sees things differently, but in some cases, 2 years might be too short, or for others, too long. We have a target, and there's a difference between a target and an obligation. I understand my colleague's objective. Indeed, I would say that I agree on the principle. However, I would say that I'd prefer to place pressure on government authorities to reach a decision within 2 years. And if they feel that 2 years is not sufficient, then they can ask for an extension. I would say that we share this objective. We might choose a different path to get there, but the target is the same. I think that adding pressure on the government machine could be just as effective as an obligation within 2 years. Okay, so Mr. Longfield.
I agree with Mr. Deltel that in terms of a one-size-fits-all approach could be diverting resources at the wrong time in the wrong place and actually slow down the process. So I think being able to put the pressure when it's needed, where it's needed to get the results that we need is really the spirit of what we're trying to do here.
Ms. Collins, did you have your hand up? No?
I did, but we can go to the vote.
We'll vote now, please.
Mr. Duguid.
Contre.
Mr. Longfield.
Opposed.
Ms. Taylor-Roy.
Opposed.
Ms. Thompson.
Oppose.
Mr. Weiler.
Opposed.
Monsieur Deltel.
Contre.
Mr. Kirk.
I'm opposed.
Mr. McLean.
Opposed.
Mr. Lake. Also opposed. Madame Posey.
Pour.
Ms. Collins.
In favor.
Yeas pour 2, nays contre 9-9.
Okay, so the amendment is defeated, which brings us to NDP 28. Ms. Collins?
Well, this has a similar spirit as the last two motions, and given the comments of my colleagues, especially Mr. Deltel and Mr. Longfield, I just want to kind of highlight one element of this motion. And it says the ministers may establish a time frame of more than 2 years if they determine that a proposed regulation or instrument cannot be developed in that time, in which case they shall publish their reasons in the Canada Gazette. It seems to me that this motion really speaks to exactly what the two members were in favor of, which is that this is giving flexibility to the minister, that there is pressure put on to not exceed 2 years, but there is flexibility and the ability for the minister to establish a different time frame of more than 2 years if needed, just needing to propose the rationale. So I hope the members will reconsider and support this motion.
Okay. Mr. Kirk?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Ms. Collins, for that. My question was, especially in light of the amendment that the government brought forward, which talked about adding, if I pull it up here, the 2-year timeline with requiring that to have a published statement and whatnot. I'm just curious to ask officials with the amendment NDP 28. I'm just wondering, is this something that would be concurrent with that? I'm hoping to get some guidance from the officials as to where they see this in terms of the impact. Because I know that we're talking about different clauses of the bill here. Is there similar impact? What is the possibility of this affecting different parts of CEPA? I'd like to ask some clarification from the officials if I could.
We have this.
And just in further to that, same question to the officials, but Madame about publishing the reasons in the Canada Gazette, and the amendment brought forward this morning that we already approved was the minister shall publish in the environmental registry. So just the difference between the two and which one, where people look for these reasons about what the delay is. We can have some clarification on that. That would be instructive.
Is it Ms. Farquharson who's going to take the? Yeah, go ahead, please.
Sure. Okay. I'll just start with there are in fact timelines on a lot of the steps that are taken under the bill. And so just to clarify, the amendment that you discussed previously and you adopted a government motion related to, that was moving from a draft risk assessment to a final risk assessment. And when the final risk assessment is published, a statement about proposed measures to be taken is also published. So the amendment that you passed said that if it takes you more than 2 years, then the minister must publish reasons. And now you're debating timelines on subsequent risk management instruments. So when the final risk assessment is published, there's a statement about the measures that are going to be taken. The first measure is under what we call the SEPA time clock that's in SEPA and says you have to get the draft regulation done in 24 months and the final one done in 18 months. And so the issue has always been, what happens to the other risk management instruments? What are their timelines on? And so the bill proposed that when the first risk management instrument was published, the ministers would have to state what the estimated timelines were for the other risk management instruments. And that is to allow for new information to come up, and also flexibility between risk management instruments, because it's if you put a hard deadline on those subsequent risk management instruments, you may find, for instance, that the nature of the industry changes and the instrument you proposed is not the one you need, like not the most effective, or it could be that there are other risk management instruments under other related to other substances that should move faster. So that's why the flexibility is there. I hope that helps somewhat.
Go ahead, Mr.
No, I didn't get the answer between the two different, the minister publishing in the environmental registry versus Ms. Collins talking about publish the reasons in the Canada Gazette.
Yes. I mean, I would say we use the Canada Gazette for official publications. And so I'll have to just look and see where these are. Let me check on that, okay?
Ms. Collins?
Yeah, I just wanted to remind the committee of that section. This isn't a hard deadline, but rather a specified deadline that has flexibility built in, because the minister may establish a time frame of more than 2 years if they determine that the proposed regulation or instrument cannot be developed in that time, and then they just need to give their rationale. And so this is really about improving and helping prevent lengthy delays in implementing the full suite of risk management measures. So I do hope that my honorable colleagues will support it.
Thank you. Anyone else before we go to a vote on NDP 28?
Sorry, Chair. I was hoping to have a response from the official.
Okay. Before we vote. Okay, fine. Ms. Farquharson, were you able to pinpoint that answer in the very short time we've given you?
So we have NDP 28 says published in the Gazette. NDP 29 says published in the registry, which there's more flexibility in that.
Sorry, what does that mean, more flexibility?
I mean, those are the NDP, more flexibility. I mean, just that we operate it. I'm not sure there's more flexibility in it. We operate the registry and can put it on the registry ourselves. The Canada Gazette, obviously, we're going through a different process, but I think the the registry is I believe stakeholders consult both the registry and the Canada Gazette. So I guess I'll just stop there. I guess it's the NDP motions that are referring to different ones.
So if I may, Mr. Chair, if the two said the same thing, would the stakeholders be able to get the information from one source as opposed to drifting between two sources here? And I would, as a layperson, I would say that Canada Gazette is more well understood than environmental registry, but maybe people that work in this sector specifically and look at SEPA on a regular basis are more familiar with the environmental registry, but perhaps we should have some consistency between the two reporting channels.
Well, everything that is on the Canada Gazette ends up in the registry. So the registry is probably more complete in that sense.
And yet the Gazette goes to the registry. So getting it on the Gazette would automatically put it in the registry. That's what you just said?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Ms. Collins?
I just wanted to, yes, kind of speak to Mr. McLean's comments, and just you'll notice that most of my amendments have the Canada Gazette in them, and that was really hearing from environmental stakeholders who do use this, that was their preference. But NDP 29, which is coming up, does have the environmental registry, and that was done in consultation with attempting to get support from other parties. And so if Mr. McLean would support this amendment, but with it going into the environmental registry, I'm very open to amending it as such. I do think the Canada Gazette is a better option, but I think moving forward with this is the best option. And so either one I would be in favor of if there is support around the table.
Okay.
Sorry, Chair.
No.
Just to the officials, just so that I'm perfectly clear about the environmental registry versus the something being gazetted. Everything that is gazetted ends up in the registry, but what I don't think your explanation included was the reverse is not necessarily true or is true. So everything in the environmental registry is not necessarily gazetted. However, the other way around, it is. Am I correct in that understanding?
That is true. I'm just trying to find out how much is in the registry that, but that what you said is true.
I'm sorry, back to the analyst here. I'm just really trying to understand the difference between S5, outside of the wording on the registry, versus the Canada Gazette, which doesn't seem to be that large a hurdle, what the difference is between the two, because both of them are saying 2 years, and if we exceed 2 years, the minister has to give reasons for the delay in the estimated time frame within which the statement under this paragraph is published. And it really seems like it's saying the same thing here, just through a different mechanism. If Ms. Collins, if you can walk me through what the difference between the Liberal amendment and your amendment outside of that point is, I'd appreciate that.
Mr. McLean, just I will be repeating a lot of what Ms. Farquharson said, but just that the Liberal amendment was dealing with the risk management plan and the kind of proposed versus the finalized assessment. And proposed is the wrong language, but I hope you understand what I mean. Whereas this is a later step, and it's really about, this is about kind of the additional measures and instruments, the making sure we have accountability and helping prevent lengthy delays in the full suite of risk management plans. And Ms. Farquharson, if you want to jump in and correct anything I've said, please feel free.
Mr. Duguid?
Mr. Chair, like others, I'm appreciating this very nuanced discussion, and it does seem that officials wanted a little bit more time to explore the subtleties, and I know our side would very much like to have a pause.
We'll pause then for a few minutes. speakers list.
Okay, I just was curious about procedure. With the pauses, when a member asks for a pause, is that something that we normally, is it by consensus or debate or voting on? Is it
Anyone can
just
ask for a pause.
That's a good question. We've been acting informally, but I'll get you a formal response.
Thanks.
Pause is at the discretion. It's at the discretion of the chair, but the chair can always be challenged, so it's not unlimited
Good.
power.
Okay, well, maybe just a comment as someone who very much wants to be there in person, but is sick today and can't fly. It's difficult knowing that the other committee members are having discussions in those pauses when I think we should probably have those conversations here kind of on the record.
Sure, I think they were just trying to clarify some things. But anyway, we've opened up debate now, so if there's anything else you want to say or ask a question, yeah. Mr. Lake.
Just an observation on that. I mean, first of all, that's why it's so important that we're in person, but I understand that the member can't be right now. But even if we were in the same room all together and we had a pause for clarity, not everybody is in every conversation that we would have when that's the case.
That's a good point. Anyway, I think we can proceed. But if you have any questions or comments, Ms. Collins, on the substance of your amendment, or do you want to allow others to intervene on the amendment?
I think I've spoken extensively on it so far. Open to members' questions or comments.
Would anyone else like to comment? Mr. Duguid.
Mr. Chair, just to offer to Ms. Collins, we will be the government side will be opposing 28, 29, 30, but will be supporting NDP 31.
Shall we go to a vote on 28?
Sorry, we will be supporting 29 as well. Thank you.
Okay. Shall we go to a vote on 28?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Maybe just a quick question to my Conservative colleagues. There seemed to be some interest in this and really statements in support of the spirit of this motion, and I'm curious if we have their support around the table.
28? On 28? Well, we're going to vote now, so that will...
No, I think I think you'll... Ms. Collins, you'll find us voting against this because of input we had while we were paused on what this implied. Our concern was we wanted to make sure that there was consistency between your motion here and the one that the Liberals passed earlier today, and we discovered that there wasn't consistency and there were some reasons to oppose it. So I apologize. I just didn't want you to be surprised.
Okay. So, Ms. Collins, you're on mute.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to thank Mr. McLean for the explanation. And I think this kind of speaks to the point, especially for people who are listening in right now, following in on our debates, having the reasons why.
Mr. Chair? Unfortunately, because of the sound quality, interpretation is not possible. Is there something that...
Ms. Collins is wearing the right headset, I believe, but there might be a transmission issue.
Maybe I'll just talk for a moment and see if the translators... I'm wondering if it's...
I'm being told that for the interpreters, it's not about the headset, it's more about the sound quality that's reaching the booth. And this is due to the fact that the participant is remote. The quality is insufficient, I understand.
Again, Ms. Collins, and we'll just test it.
For sure, yeah, absolutely. Maybe just to speak to Mr. McLean's point about the pause and the fact that members were able to get information from the officials that could be valuable both for other members of the committee, but also for the public who's listening in.
Okay. How's it going? I just want to check with the interpreter.
She just said that the sound quality remains insufficient to allow interpretation.
Sound is not sufficiently good.
Chair?
For just a moment, please, for the interpreters to be able to interpret at the moment. Mr. Coury.
Chair, I've faced similar challenges and frustrations, especially when it comes to the translation. But I would suggest maybe that call with IT to make sure that everything is in order, because when one has the right headset, that doesn't necessarily always mean that it's working.
Call with IT right now.
Yeah, so maybe just a short break to ensure that Ms. Collins can engage.
Okay, well, we're going to take a short break, and we'll see where we land on this. there's not much time left. I'm going to suspend the meeting, but before I do, I just want to make sure that we all understand that when someone is virtual, we have to plan for a potential malfunction, which means we have to plan for a quick substitution, especially when we're proposing amendments. So for future reference for everyone here who might be on screen next time, if you're proposing amendments and we run into difficulty, then we have to be able to scramble, or your side has to be able to scramble and find a substitute to present your amendments. So there's some contingency planning involved. Obviously, if you're not presenting amendments, it's not as complicated, but it's something to keep in mind. So we haven't encountered this before, and I guess we're not prepared for it on any side. But so I'm going to, with that, I'm going to adjourn the meeting.
I'll move that, Mr.
Yeah,
Chair.
okay. Everyone's good? Okay, thank you.